You're alive? I am. When you gripped me in the depths, I gave up on spinning back. Instead, I poured all my Robux into Shrine of the Drowned. That was the moment I understood it. The true essence of Ether. I found out how to perfectly combine my two attunements into a brand new mantra.
Yo, is he high? What is bro yapping about?
The reason you're going to lose is because you have your joins on. Are you for real? For real, for real. Let me show you a real mantra. By taking Frost-Drawn Flame Charm and smashing the two together, I've created an entirely new technique. Imaginary mantra. Purple. Has this ever happened to you?
領域展開
Well, if so, should have parried, buddy. That's your fault. What you just saw right there was a mage build, and they are a scourge on Deepwoken. So to understand why there are so many mage builds, we gotta learn why people run mage builds. In the beginning of the game, back in verse 1, the meta was completely different. Despite people going 100 attunement and their mantras being bigger than ever, the meta was still mainly focused on M1 based combat. Back in the day, there was no tempo. Instead, we had a bar called Reservoir. Reservoir worked kinda similar to tempo, except for key difference being you couldn't vent and you couldn't get your reservoir back except for eating an elemental stone. So essentially, when you ran out of reservoir and you didn't have enough elemental stones, you couldn't cast mantras. This made people a lot more wary when using mantras and prioritized high ether regen armor instead of physical stats. But when Layer 2 released,
Give it to me! Give it to me! Give it to me! Give it to me! Just give it! Damn!
suddenly, ether became a lot more available. You could easily regen it just by landing a couple of M1s. And so you could be a lot less careful with the mantras that you were using, and you could just throw them out. The second reason why mage builds became so popular was the parry change that came with verse 2. Back in old Deepwoken, a major complaint about the game was the fact that battles took forever, and it was just an endless parry trade back and forth. To combat this, Archmage decided to make the game more combo-based, and encourage offense. To do this, he decided to, quote, to increase offense, a quarter of the parry frames will be block frames. Also, as another change to parrying, we added a cooldown. This cooldown will allow you to have much more combos in your attacks. Suddenly, after the release of verse 2, mantras became much more viable, as they were able to extend combos, and their variable timing made it much harder to predict the normal M1s. Finally, mage builds just do a lot of damage. I mean, there's not much more to say. You've seen the clips. People get hit with, like, Sightless Beam, Mecha Gatling, or some other stupid mantra, and all their HP is just gone in an instant. So what can be done about mage builds? The devs had a good idea for countering mage builds when they added Silent Heart, except for the fact that even Silent Heart struggles against the range and options that 10 mantras can provide. So to start, I think mantra damage should just be scaled down. I don't know what percentage to scale them down, but I think it would certainly help with the damage problem. Next, drastically reduce tempo gain. Even with high erudition, not having enough ether is a far cry from the problem it was in verse 1. Finally, I think that the amount of ether you regen from your tempo should just be reduced. This would force mage builds to pick armor, such as like Prophet's Cloak or something, right? That have higher regen, but lower damage resistance. And that makes them much squishier. In conclusion, subscribe. And I also just wanted to say, thank you for the support. Like, for my last video, I had like 600, and now I'm at like 1,600. How? You guys are amazing. Thank you. Also, join my guild. It's literally Deepwoken. Link in description.